He was a Nobel Prize winner, a literary god who hunted lions, fought bulls, and wrote with a force that changed the world. But what if I told you that, beneath all that glory, his legacy was a curse, a quiet, devastating tragedy that haunted his own children? What if I told you his three sons, John, Patrick, and Gregory, all led lives of heartbreak, forever trapped in the shadow of their father's immense fame? This isn't the story of a hero. This is the story of the human cost of genius. In this video, we are going to pull back the curtain on one of literature's most enduring and heartbreaking family sagas, the untold lives of Ernest Hemingway's children. We will uncover how a life of unparalleled privilege and exotic adventure became an unbearable source of pressure and sorrow. The dramatic, often tragic path each son took to find his own identity, away from a name that defined and dominated their existence. The final haunting secret that connects all of their stories, a devastating inheritance more potent than any literary prize. I've spent weeks digging through biographies, private letters, and historical archives, documents that show a side of the Hemingway family no one ever talks about. This isn't just a list of facts. It's a deep dive into the human struggle for identity, a story of love loss, and the devastating weight of a legendary last name. By the end of this video, you won't just know about the author. You'll understand the generational tragedy he left behind. Jack John Hadley, Nicanor Hemingway. Let's start with the eldest son, Jack. His father called him Bumby, a nickname that painted a picture of a carefree, adventurous boy. But while his father was off writing masterpieces and chasing adventure, Jack was fighting a very different kind of war, one that would shape the rest of his life. Born in Paris in 1923, Jack's childhood was anything but ordinary. He learned to ski on the slopes of Austria, fished the rivers of Spain, and sailed the waters of Cuba with his father. He was Ernest's firstborn, the golden boy, the one Ernest secretly hoped would follow in his footsteps. But when World War II broke out, Jack enlisted in the OSS Office of Strategic Services, America's spy agency. He was dropped behind enemy lines in France, tasked with helping the French resistance. During a mission, he was captured by the Germans and spent months in a brutal POW camp. This was not a story of adventure. It was a story of survival, of trauma, and of enduring the unimaginable. This experience changed him forever. After the war, he tried to forge his own path. He became a successful fly fisherman, a respected writer, and a loving father. But he could never truly escape the feeling that he was only the son of Ernest Hemingway. His writing was constantly compared to his father's. His achievements were measured against a genius that could never be matched. He lived a good life, but it was a life lived under a shadow so long and so immense it was hard to see his own light. He spent his life fighting for his own identity, and in the end, that struggle became his most defining characteristic. But Jack's struggle was a matter of identity. For his younger brother Patrick, the shadow was even darker, and it came with a different kind of burden. Patrick Hemingway. While Jack fought a war of his own, Patrick was sent on a different kind of mission to live out his father's wildest dreams. Patrick, born in 1928, was the son who seemed to most embody his father's spirit. He was his father's favorite hunting and fishing companion. Ernest took him to Africa, where they hunted big game and lived the adventurous life Ernest immortalized in his famous works like The Green Hills of Africa. Patrick wasn't just an observer. He embraced this life, falling in love with the continent. He would later become a big game hunter, a university professor in Tanzania, and a dedicated conservationist. But being his father's favorite came with a heavy price. Patrick was a first-hand witness to his father's tragic decline. He saw the paranoia, the mood swings, the crushing depression, and the heavy drinking that consumed the man he idolized. He was there in the final dark years when his father's health collapsed and the literary giant became a stranger, a ghost of his former self. Patrick lived a fascinating and accomplished life, but it was a life constantly burdened by the tragic memory of a father he lost to his own demons long before the final public tragedy. He carried the weight of that legacy, and for years he was the sole heir to his father's literary trust, a a responsibility that was both an honor and an immense pressure. He was a survivor of the Hemingway saga, but not without scars. And then there was Gregory, the youngest, the one who truly carried the full, devastating weight of his father's curse. Gregory Hemingway. Gregory's life wasn't just lived in his father's shadow. It was a direct reflection of his father's deepest, most tragic struggles. Gregory, the youngest of the three, was born in 1931. He seemed poised to break away from the family's turbulent legacy. He studied to become a doctor, a path of service and stability that stood in stark contrast to his family's chaotic artistic lives. But he was also a man haunted by severe mental illness and a profound struggle with gender dysphoria issues that eerily mirrored his father's own battles with depression and emotional instability. The relationship between father and son was incredibly complex, a volatile mix of intense love and even more intense conflict. Gregory was the only son brave enough to confront his father about his volatile behavior. At times, Ernest was proud of him, writing letters full of affection. At other times, he disowned him completely, cutting him off financially and emotionally. Gregory's life became a downward spiral of failed marriages, public outbursts, and a constant agonizing battle with his own identity. He was arrested multiple times for various offenses, and his life became a series of dramatic, self-destructive acts. He spent his final days in a women's jail in Florida, where he passed away in 2001. His death was a final, heartbreaking testament to a life spent fighting inner demons, a life defined by a struggle to find his place in a world that only saw him as Hemingway's son. But the story doesn't end with their individual tragedies. The most disturbing part of this family's legacy is what they all shared: a history of depression, alcoholism, and a quiet, self-destructive tendency that ran through the Hemingway bloodline. It was as if the same brilliant, volatile energy that gave Ernest his incredible talent was also a curse that consumed his family. The tragic truth is the very thing that made him a literary god was the very thing that made his sons' lives so profoundly difficult. They were the casualties of a genius too big for one family to contain. The story of the Hemingway family is a stark reminder that even the most brilliant minds can leave behind a complicated and painful legacy. It's a truth we also saw when we explored the lives of the great physicist Stephen Hawking's children in a previous video. If you found this story compelling, you'll be fascinated by how Hawking's children navigated a different kind of genius and a different kind of family burden. You can watch that video right here. But before you go, tell me in the comments below, do you think the weight of a famous last name is ultimately a gift or a curse? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Here